Friends, it is once again time to break out the harvest book and talk about how much money the garden saved us in September. So everything that we grew in September, or harvested in September, I guess, was tomatoes, peppers, summer squash, broccoli, cucamelons, cherry tomatoes, peas, beans, herbs, potatoes, onions, ground cherries, winter squash, kohlrabi, and eggplant. And by eggplant, I mean we had one teeny tiny little eggplant like this big. So, you know, it earned us a whopper amount of money. But anyway, there was a few things that were kind of like that were small amounts. That was one. We only had one kohlrabi plant make it to harvest, but it was like a pound. It was almost a pound. Ground cherries were just kind of starting to come in. Our onion harvest was small, but it was 1.5 pounds, so I'll take it. We had a few herbs. We had a small amount of beans. We had more beans this month. I had a late planting because all of our early plantings got washed out. We had the final trickle of peas. And we had some broccoli trickle in. It was the sprouts of the plants that I had harvested the full crowns earlier in the summer. And everything else was a lot more amounts than those few things. If you haven't seen any of these other videos, I will, not to sound like a broken record, but this was an extremely poor garden year here in Eastern Canada. I'm in Nova Scotia. Excuse me, I'm gonna sneeze. Okay, I think I'm good now. So we had a very dry winter last year that went into a very dry spring. I can't recall a spring that was as dry, and that led to record-setting wildfires here in Nova Scotia, unlike we've ever had before. And typically we have a lot of precipitation in the spring here, and we had not a lot to speak of, which led to that wildfire situation. That was the last 2 weeks of May-ish, which is typically when a lot of people are planting their gardens. And that was followed by a June unlike I've ever seen before. I think we had 20 out of 30 days in June that rained, and of the 10 remaining days, I think only 2 of them were sunny. Like the rest were cloudy, overcast. So it was, and then July, it was, you know, hot and humid. Like we had, we don't typically have blight like on our tomatoes. It's usually frost that takes out our tomatoes, and this year blight took them out. So I have renewed sympathy for those of you in more southern areas that, you know, typically have to battle blight. It decimated the tomatoes, the ones that, you know, actually did well. So harvests this year were not maximized, I guess. But overall, I'm still happy with the gardening season that we had. And a part of that is because I do credit having some things at home and some things at the community garden. Having the community garden is in ground, at home I garden in raised beds, and that helped counteract some of the strangeness of the year in that, you know, some things that were drowning in town were well draining here at home, and some things that weren't getting the heat that they needed here at home, because it's a little bit shadier here at home, you know, we're in full sun in town and we're maybe able to recover a little better. So, you know, having many baskets, I guess, helped ease some of the painful gardening season that I know a lot of people experienced this year. And dahlias will be a whole other topic. Don't worry, there's dahlia videos coming. But I just wanted to preface this with some of that information in case you hadn't seen any of these videos that we've talked about so far this summer. I've done this every month, and there will be one in October as well. And I think you know, at the end of the year, I'll do like a summary and total up everything. But before all of that, let's get into the September totals. So the big things were obviously the squash, the summer and the winter, the tomatoes, the potatoes, and those were the big four things. So for tomatoes, in September, we harvested 66.4 pounds. That was fantastic, considering our season. That's probably about what we harvested last year, but that was with half the plants. So had I not overplanted this year, like I had grand visions of tomato everything, and you know, that's a lot for me to process. Like I was tired of processing them after that. So I have to rethink what I want to do next year. I think I would like a few more tomatoes. I'd like to have around 100 pounds, I think, and then that would be plenty. But they ranged between $1.99 a pound and $3 a pound, depending on the kind of tomato and how they were grown. So I'll give you a grand total, you know, of conventional, which is, you know, typically the cheapest you're going to find these things, and then also organic, which is how we grow everything. So it's kind of a more true value of what we grew in the garden. So, peppers were pretty good too. So in September, we harvested 7.7 pounds of peppers. Peppers average, this is a bell pepper price, about $3.49 a pound. I saw jalapenos this year being sold for $1 a jalapeno. So by no means do I think this is a true value of peppers. Peppers are freaking expensive this year, but this is the price I went with. So that came out to like almost $27. And I only have one price for that. I can't find like, you know, a good reliable organic price for peppers. Summer squash, we had about 8 pounds. Those ranged between $1 and $3 a pound. Our potatoes, oh, our potatoes. So we grew fingerling potatoes. So you're gonna find that I'm using a more expensive price than, like, you know, a russet or a yellow potato, something like that, because these are, you know, this is the price of what the fingerling potatoes would be. And these are the only potatoes we grow because it's not worth it for me. We live in the middle. We're surrounded by two major potato producing provinces. That's Prince Edward Island. And there's also a potato belt that runs through New Brunswick. So it is way cheaper and easier for me to buy potatoes than it is for me to try to grow them. So the only thing I bother with is the fingerling potatoes. We got just under 16 pounds of potatoes, fingerling potatoes this year. That may sound good, but last year we grew 7 plants and got 22 pounds. This year we grew 20 plants and got 16 pounds. So they were at the community garden and they just drowned. They drowned, and then when they stopped drowning, they got demolished by potato bugs. Like, I just could not stay on top of them. We did the best we could. I did use some diatomaceous earth finally, rather than trying to pick them, but they just never really recovered. So hopefully next year will be a better potato year, but we'll take our 16 pounds and we'll be thankful for it. There was also a lot of damage this year, a lot more bug damage, and I think it's just because, like, the plants just, I mean, to the actual potatoes, like, there was a lot more wireworm damage than usually we see. There's usually a little bit, but not, like, at least 50% of the potatoes have some damage on them this year. So that'll be a pain. They're not going to store for a long time. They're fingerlings. They don't really store that long anyway. I'll try to store about 20 for seed potatoes next year. And the rest we will cut around the bad parts and maybe make some frozen O'Brien potatoes. I don't think I'll bother trying to can them. But we'll figure out some ways to use them and get them preserved. The winter squash, we had about 8.5 pounds. That was great. It was mostly delicata and acorn squash. all the squash that I tried to grow at home, the deer ate. So that was my Canada crookneck, all my pumpkins, my mashed potato squash, which I was really mad about. But we'll try again next year, and we're gonna figure out something for the deer next year. I say this every year, but I'm serious this year. I mean it. They ate almost all of our beans, and they ate all of our squash. So game on. We're gonna win next year, deer. So be ready. And those were the big things. So overall, we harvested in September 116 pounds and 1/4. So that's awesome. I'm super happy about that. I think next year it will be higher, but like I said, this year is what it is, or is what it was. So on the low side, that works out to $309.08. And on the organic side, that is $453.69. So September here in Eastern Canada is usually our biggest harvest month. I think last month we were around $300 or something like that on the organic side. Yeah, 126 and 352. So October will be much, much smaller. There's just things trickling in now. This is the, probably half of our gardening season happens in September harvest-wise. But I am stoked about what we were able to pull out of the garden, especially considering the growing conditions this year. So I hope you have found this series kind of interesting. Definitely come back in October. We will total up the October harvests, and maybe we will do the grand totals in October as well. It's been very interesting for me to keep track, and I'm excited to have something to compare next year to. I've tried to do the weighing and things before, and it's always started out with good intentions, and then it's kind of, you get tired of weighing everything. And there's definitely been some things we missed, like the things that we snack on in the garden the most, the peas, the cucamelons, things like that. I know there's some that don't make it in the house, some cherry tomatoes, stuff like that. But these are everything that I have totaled and told you are things that did make it into the house and did get weighed. So I'm pretty happy with what we have managed to salvage this year. So I hope you found that interesting. I hope you do come back. I thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.